Hey guys, it's Jay, here with another review video. Before the review begins, I'd like to ask if you enjoy the video, leave a like and share with others. Without further ado, onto the vid. The episode begins with Thanatos standing in front of Berto and Ariel. Alice takes note of Thanatos' presence and turns to Mikhail, stating that if he engages with Thanatos one-on-one, they will both die. She then asks for permission to call forth the Judgment Chains. She adds that she will assist Lord Haven, and they will cut off Thanatos' sins where they stand, and that the Harbinger of Death stands before them, so they must act now. Mikhail then says that what happens next is an intervention no mortal man dare witness, but she can do as she wishes. Thanatos then stands with Malhazar's blade and says, "Stone will, the blade of Malhazar, the Invictus vessel, and the jewel of his crown, Merlin's gift." As you can see, men who defy me all die, yet I still breathe. Even time cannot take what is mine. Malhazar is dead, and soon the lot of you will share his fate. Bow to me, and perhaps I will be gracious enough to grant you. A slash then passes by him, as Andrea, standing near Ian, calls out the insurrection wave technique, as she holds Muramasa in her dominant hand. Thanatos then laughs again. "These numbers mean nothing. You simply surround me with a host that will perish. If you are not aware, I will make it obvious. I possess the chi of 3 of your first table members. My power now surpasses the god tier, and yet still grows. You are no match for me. I've chosen to gather who will bend the knee and to slaughter the rest." Reed says that they must engage, as there is no other way. Yet if they make a stand there, they risk destroying the island entirely. He adds that his servants may pose a problem, but if he can hold them long enough, he may create an opening for Lord Oliveira, as he may just be able to take Thanatos out if it's a one-on-one. Berto then roars behind Thanatos, as he tells him not to stand there, and to make their decision, die or bow to their new god. The sound of an explosion is then heard, as Thanatos looks towards the mountain Shay has been mourning on. As Shay shows himself, Thanatos greets him. Reed then suggests that Shay has made his presence known too soon, and that while he is happy to see him, he questions if Shay means to fight Thanatos there, but wants him to allow them to formulate a plan that involves minimal casualties, as knuckle for knuckle only means utter destruction at this point. Mikhail then comments on Shay laying eyes on the source of his grief. Shay then cries a tear of lava, and in his hands forms a Tomas, but quickly enlarges it, its size now comparable to that of a mountain. As all look upon his grand technique, Reed says, "No, Lord Hart, stay your hand. There are too many innocents between you and your vengeance. Do not do this. You will destroy everyone and everything. Lord Hart." Thanatos says that Shay wouldn't dare, but he jumps off the mountain as Ilios screams out no. As Shay approaches, the Greyhounds tell Gary to get to cover. Shay then yells in rage with the giant Tomas behind him, which begins to incinerate all present. The area is then filled with a flash of white light. The scene then changes to a whole new environment, as Mahalalel asks what Shay has done. Shay then asks in return what this place is, and if this is his doing. Mahalalel says it is not, as this is far beyond him, but warns Shay to bind himself as they stand at the beginning, and this place is the room of creation, where everything was made, Thanatos being the one who finishes his brother's sentence. He then says it's been so long he thought he wouldn't recognize this place. Shay then looks menacingly towards Thanatos, who in turn responds with, "And he's brought us here just for you, huh? A mortal. I admired your hate for me. All that was left was for you to bow, but I did not think it would go that far. You killed everyone, Lord Hart, and your action is what he undoes. This is when he chooses to intervene." Ilios then tells his brother to mind his tongue, as he need not be reminded that he stands in the audience of his creator. A divine being enters through a door, with 2 guards behind him. Ilios kneels immediately, and Shay begins to ask if that is who he thinks it is. Ilios confirms he is the father of talents himself, the living god. He then adds it is he who led Ilios to Shay, and that he must be careful with what he speaks in this place. He continues by saying Thanatos carries himself as though he is the beginning itself, but even he cannot resist the power of his maker. God then looks upon Thanatos. "You wasted the very talents I gave you. When you should have been aiding them, you made them serve your gifts. Need I remind you it is I who granted you this power. I have not cast a blind eye. Your works, schemes, and lies have polluted the things I made beautiful. You think I have come down to destroy you, Elimelech? No. I will smite you with the hand of one made lower than you." Shay questions this as Thanatos is here, so why not do it now and put an end to this, adding that he cannot be saved, so why not stop him now? "Will all then be made right? I ask you, Shay, what of his followers? Millions loyal to him through deceit. Will killing him now cause him to suddenly turn and serve instead of take? And if he must be killed, since you see no hope for him, are you prepared to do the same to them all, even those deceived? Without him, they are less evil, but evil nonetheless." Shay then asks if Thanatos will hurt more. "He will try. I have already empowered many with what is needed to prevent that. but they seem to not care as much as you do. It has never been about him, though he thinks it is, that all this happened because he was slighted, made different from his brothers. Pride, but he stopped looking at those he could help and looked instead at himself. He was lost. I will undo his work. I will restore the sight of those he had blinded. You must refrain at all costs from granting death. Death satisfies your need for justice through the pain of another, but grace is to endure pain so that another might live. Killing to end your grief is weakness, but to offer grace is a strength many may never allow themselves to know. My plan is already in motion. I will end this. All I ask is that you believe this one thing. You are the plan, and you were never the second option. Now onto the highlights. I will apologize in advance if some of the parts feel a bit scattered in relation to what I bring up, but I will try my best to make them as cohesive as possible. First, let's look at some of the implications regarding Mikhail. Taking a look at his hand Alice first, she asks for permission to call forth what is known as the Judgment Chains. We can properly assume this is an ability from her talent, likely being the strongest ability from it. While this ability is clearly unknown, given her design, the context of the situation, and the specific wording, we can look towards the Bible to locate the inspiration of it, as well as guess as to what it can do. Jude chapter 1 verse 6 reads, "And the angels who did not keep their positions of authority, but abandoned their proper dwelling, these he kept in darkness, bound with everlasting chains for judgment on the great day." The context of this verse should relate to the angels who rebelled against God, and this of course relates to Thanatos, who originally was an angel that was later born as a Kimyo, eventually turning against the will of his creator and believing himself to be worth calling a god. The second half of this verse is what gives way to potentially understanding how Alice's ability works, as it mentions everlasting chains of judgment. The biblical context of this relates to said rebellious angels being bound by chains until Judgment Day. So this means Alice should be able to call forth chains that can be manifested indefinitely that are strong enough to keep even god tier level Kimyos bound. The actual strength of her chains is already backed up by their biblical counterpart, but even Orion has an ability that was stated by Minamoto to be able to put a god tier down. So Alice, being a royal as well, should grant her a similar level of strength with her chains. The type of talent this would fall into could be creation, as she could be creating the chains out of chi, as well as void, as the verse suggests the chains exist in darkness, which in Ordeal can be translated to them existing in their own dimension. Next, it's pretty clearly implied Mikhail knew what was going to happen, as he tells Alice what happens next is an intervention no mortal man dare witness. He then narrates Shay looking upon Thanatos as if he's already seen it happen before. This relates back to episode 115, where Mikhail tells Aldrich he cannot tell him of the vision God has shown him, as it will overcome him with great fear, and the fear in question would come from the fact Shay killed everyone to get to Thanatos. His knowledge of these events also explains why in the last episode he was able to predict that Gary would start a war and that Thanatos would show up. A question that can be brought up is how much did Mikhail actually know, as it's clear he knows what will occur up until the moment Shay looks upon Thanatos, but he previously uses the word intervention, which means he knows that God will step in to intercede. But I wonder if he would have been shown any part of the actual conversation that went on after everyone's death. Lastly, in regards to Mikhail, we are given two statements that could reveal how strong he might be. First, Alice mentions if he engages Thanatos one-on-one, they will both die, and Reeve furthers this by saying Mikhail may be able to take out Thanatos if it's a one-on-one, and this clearly suggests that Mikhail's true strength lies in one-on-one interactions. Keep in mind, this is a Thanatos that has now been stated to be stronger than the god tier twice, and two characters believing he can still take out this version of him shows how strong his talent likely is. The very clear drawback of this is Mikhail's own death. Though Reed doesn't confirm he would die the way Alice does, which could suggest it's possible he would live, but be heavily weakened. You could also imply that Alice's use of the Judgment Chains would limit Mikhail's own damage, thus resulting in him living while Thanatos still dies. This all leads to me wondering what Mikhail's talent is, as well as why he was ranked lower if he can still take out a stronger Thanatos. It could be due to lack of versatility in regards to his talent, and if assignment comes into play, his may not have been as important when he was originally ranked. We'd also have to think about how he'd fare against the other god tier, as Bjorn was an immortal with an unstable hammer and dual ice axes, while Reed can hit you without fail, and also has Rai for immense damage. The reason he's at least placed above Zuri may come from the fact that she is a fan-made character with a fan-made talent, with one of her abilities potentially being able to seal off a Kimyo's talent when they look into her eyes. And since Mikhail is blind, this would have zero effect on him. Now, let's look at some things regarding Thanatos. First, we must look at the fact that he has Malhazar's blade, which confirms it was in his tomb as I said at the end of my last video. However, he is also aware of the blade's actual name, with that being Stone Will. This could prove the weapon possesses a talent, as every other weapon in the series that has a name has a talent that went along with it. Each of Andrea's weapons has a name as well as a talent ability that goes along with them. Shay also has 2 weapons with names that have abilities, and even his Elder's Mantle, while not a weapon, also has a name and ability. There are also weapons in the series that, while are special in their own way, do not possess innate talent abilities, and those would be Sabito's Black Sword and Azam's unique weapon. So the fact Malhazar's blade is known as Stone Will should highly suggest it has an ability of its own. However, guessing what ability the sword has based on its name is quite difficult, as only 3 talent weapons in the series would give a clue as to what they can do based on their names, and those would be Heim, Vinter, and Zahara. Heim is short for Heimdall, who is a god of Norse mythology, and Heim's ability to summon the Bifrost directly relates to Heimdall, who dwells in a place where the Burning Rainbow Bridge meets the sky, aka the Bifrost. Vinter is likely a play on Fimbulwinter, which is a harsh winter that lasts 3 years and is a prelude to the events that will occur in Ragnarok of Norse mythology as well, which explains why Vinter is an ice-related weapon. Zahara's name can mean shine or brightness, which is an immediate play on how she will blind Shay's foes through the boosting of the Ilios talent, effectively making it brighter than it already is. So if we think about abilities in regards to Stonewill's name, there are a couple routes that could be taken. Focusing on the first half of it would give it the literal ability to manipulate stones of some sort. This could also be a form of armor reinforcement, potentially stronger than using rock armor. And focusing more on the second half of its name could see the weapon giving a form of will manipulation, and this would also add to how Malhazar's will could not be overwritten. Moving on, let's take a deeper look into Thanatos himself. It is clear from this episode that Thanatos sees himself as a god, and he wants his followers to see him that way as well. And this is why he tells those before him in this episode to bow to their new god. Ilios adds to this by saying Thanatos carries himself as if he were the beginning, and this can also imply that Thanatos wants to be like his creator. Episode 116 furthers this, as Thanatos says it is he who must be set free from death. So taking into account what I said, Thanatos wants to be like God, who cannot die and has grand power. However, Ilios' dialogue and Thanatos' own actions make it clear that he is not above the one who created him. The desire to be like his creator may lead to why he amasses followers, but through deceit. Thanatos has gained many followers through promising them the very earth, which is implied in episode 116. Yet even the followers he's promising the world to are not the ones who will actually be inheriting it, as Thanatos truly only wants a world filled with the strong, which is mentioned by Abel in episode 124. So Kimils like Leith, who are outcasts and have been saved by Thanatos' will, which he says himself in episode 123, as well as the soldiers Thanatos killed in episode 116, are truly only pawns in his grand scheme, as he has no real intention of keeping them around when his goal is accomplished. This deceit also adds to God saying Thanatos made them serve his gifts, as during his original time on Earth, he was using human souls to strengthen himself, and in 116, he used the souls of the soldiers to do the same, which put him to a level comparable to the Pillars. This was not the intention God had for Thanatos in sending him down with his brothers, as he says he should have been aiding them. It is truly unknown what this would look like given how Thanatos' abilities work, but it could be as simple as Thanatos aiding in battles from invaders to his home country. The immense difference that Thanatos has from his brothers led him to feeling slighted by God. The question is, what caused this mental shift? You might initially think it would be humans, and there could be truth to this, but in episode 24, we see Kataigita was seen as a god by the humans, and the Kimils throughout time likely felt this way about Thanatos. So it's hard to believe that enough humans felt that way about Thanatos when he was younger to cause such a shift. Since God said the word pride, it likely has something to do with Thanatos looking too far at himself. He may have had an insecurity about his powers being different from his brothers, but once he realized how far he could actually take them, he may have started to see himself above his brothers instead of beneath them. Due to what he tells Jin in episode 139, we know he taught his brothers how to use their abilities, and we see them as teens in episode 24 getting along. So this mentality shift likely occurred in their early adult life, and this would make sense, as we see them all fighting at what could be seen as their primes, and as Kimils that could range from their 30s to their 60s. Now we can look at some topics regarding the Room of Creation. First, as Thanatos says, this is a place where everything was made. This would include the sun, the moon, the earth, the stars, and the entire universe in its totality. This would also include things such as Kimils, talents, chi, and the ether. Though of course this is not where the ether realm resides. Ilios beforehand says it is the beginning, which means this is a place that supersedes space, time, and reality. We can also add this to Wolfnar, aka Code Archives' visual model of the planes in Ordeal, and put the Room of Creation above heaven itself. Based on what Thanatos says, God will use this domain to undo what Shay has done. Moving on to God himself, his entrance into the Room of Creation bears a striking resemblance to a talent we have seen before, with that being the stars from Jose's rebirth, specifically the one he made just before revealing his hide. This should add to a thought I've been having about Jose's talent recently, with that being there's clearly more to it than what we actually saw. Jose said in episode 126 that his talent can cause all what he destroys to be reborn, and then says as he destroys his body, the void will create anew, which means his talent has the ability to break things down and reshape them seemingly as he sees fit. The drawback is that he cannot restore life, and this is where God comes into play, as like I said a moment ago, he will undo what Shay has done, which of course includes restoring the lives that Shay snuffed out in his attack. This shows how talents come from God, but won't have the same full might, as Jose is effectively using a limited aspect of God's power, but God will do what Jose can't, restore lives that he did not take, showing his almighty power in its totality. This connection places more importance on Jose being in the story than there was initially. Moving on, I want to look at the duality between Shay and Abel. The thing I noticed first was the state of their clothes. Shay and Ilios are wearing white, while Thanatos and Abel are wearing dirty garments. The symbolism behind this is supposed to show Shay's closer proximity to righteousness as opposed to Abel's closer proximity to unrighteousness. Another very noticeable thing is their positions. Shay stands in front of Ilios while Abel stands behind Thanatos. This shows who is actually in control and the relationships they have with their powers, as Ilios will not hinder Shay, but only advise him, even though in theory he should be able to control his body, while Abel is allowing Thanatos full reign over his body, even though he could be in perfect control if he wanted to be. One last difference between the two is that Shay speaks while Abel does not. Shay actively voices his opinion over the subject matter directly to God, while also being answered by him, but Abel does not say a word the entire time they are there. If Abel feels so strongly about the Kimio race, why not express that opinion to his creator, and get his perspective the way Shay did? This could show Abel's true desire to not be involved until the very end, though it could also be a missed opportunity to show his character some more, and make it so that even God cannot change his opinion. The last thing I want to look at is God saying he will undo Thanatos' work, and that he will restore the sight of those he blinded. Of course, he can do this in a very literal sense, as he will undo what Shay did, but this seems more metaphorical in my opinion, as I think it is meant to be interpreted as he will take away people's belief in him, and restore how he should truly be seen, which is nothing more than a false god. This can add on to why Shay has acolytes when he becomes Ronin, as if Shay is operating in his own way, being himself, the people that interact with him will see that and put their trust in him, like the girl he saved in episode 45. Brent did confirm that Shay will have a new team and people that want to see the best for him, and I will play the clip that comes from right now.
He was asking if she would be like part of a new team that he has in the future, and perhaps if he puts together another team, another little wolf pack.
He does. He has like followers in the future. He has like his own little team because remember in the future the wolf pack doesn't side with Shay anymore because Shay is going his own way.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not like his enemy, but they can't go with him because they don't fully agree with his choices. But Shay is totally fine being by himself, but he has a team of supporters that just want to see the best for him.
Now this means that Shay will have individuals that will agree with how he operates, and assuming Shay won't be deceiving these individuals, the truth will be made clear to them the same way it was to Zahara. This would see Shay informing people that he was chosen to defeat Thanatos and his followers. But this isn't all, as we know Shay was reading the Bible during the 8-month time skip, so I could see Shay informing his followers of the gospel, the same way Leo did with Bjorn. The very truth of Shay's existence, as well as his potential spreading of the gospel, could spread far enough and shake the foundation of Thanatos' army, seeing some of them attempt to leave it, thus showing how God will restore the sight of those Thanatos has blinded. Now the last thing I want to look at is Shay himself. And let's first look at the Tomas he made. This Tomas is massive, and it should be comparable in size to the mountain he is standing on. The size of it drastically increases its destructive capacity, and shows Shay's overall growth with Ilios. The first version of Tomas Shay made was unnamed at the time, and took 4 minutes to create. He also mentioned how heavy it was. Bjorn called this impractical, and said his aim is to destroy his enemy, not the entire continent. This should imply that even his unmastered version of Tomas could destroy Greenland. Shay in this episode has eclipsed what he could do with Tomas at that point in the story. As I said before, the overall destructive capacity of Tomas should be much higher than it is before. So even if you didn't think that past version of Tomas could destroy Greenland, this version can without a doubt. Keep in mind, he killed multiple god tier level individuals with that attack. So if that level of heat was imbued into a smaller Tomas, he'd always have a means of damaging them. This was also in base form, no Zahara boost and no state, which shows his overall power with just base Ilios. Shay also formed it within seconds, as opposed to the initial 4 minutes, which is a drastic difference. He's also holding it with no issue, which means his physical strength is far higher than it was before. It should also be noted that he formed a smaller Tomas first, which means that size is still his go-to, and gives him control outside of just firing the attack, but also how much chi he wants to put into it once it's formed. Looking now more towards what God says to Shay, he says he will smite Thanatos with one made lower than him, and at the end says Shay was always the plan. This means that Shay will somehow defeat Thanatos when the proper time comes, though it's clear it won't be as easy as it seems. Regardless of its difficulty, this is why Shay is referred to as the Rod of Man by Mikhail in episode 115, and this also leads into why God says Shay was made lower than Thanatos, as Thanatos was originally an angel who was made into a Kimyo, naturally making his power very high. But Shay was also born a Kimyo, and experienced pain for the next 22 years of his life due to his original talent being removed. In every aspect of the phrase, Shay was made lower than Thanatos, which is also why he's the Rod of Men, as he will be used as a means of correction. Next, I want to discuss how Shay reflects us as believers. Shay very clearly wonders why God isn't doing the thing he feels he should, with that specific thing being dealing with Thanatos, which can be translated in real life to wondering why he doesn't deal with the evils of the world. The Bible has a collection of examples of God dealing with evil in the world, with some of the greatest examples coming from the flood, which is in Genesis chapter 6 through 9, Sodom and Gomorrah of Genesis chapter 19, and Jesus' death on the cross in Matthew chapter 27. The reason God doesn't halt or stop every act of evil is because it goes against free will. Free will can be defined as the freedom of humans to make choices that are not determined by prior causes or by divine intervention. Because of this, all people have the ability to choose what they will and won't do, making evil or sinful actions a choice. And as I said, God will not stop evil choices as it goes against free will. So people must choose to do right and not evil. Since making good and righteous decisions is possible, God sees the hope in us all that we will make those decisions. And this is why he doesn't say Thanatos is beyond being saved, but explicitly points out that Shay believes he is. This shows that even in God's eyes, an individual like Thanatos is redeemable, and this is why being guided by his brothers is a way to end the cycle. But it has to be a change in his heart and a choice he makes. But the inevitability that he won't make that choice leads to him needing to be defeated permanently. So Shay is the culmination of Thanatos never making the right choice. And to finish things up, I want to quickly look at the path Shay will go down. God tells Shay he must refrain at all costs from granting death, but considering the series so far, this is somewhat unrealistic. And beforehand, he asks Shay, since he is prepared to kill Thanatos, is he prepared to do the same to all, even the ones deceived? I feel as though this is the path Shay will go down, personally ending the lives of those he sees no hope for, who are indeed evil. And him telling Zahara he is on his way to shatter every blade swayed by evil's influence in episode 141 reinforces this. The specific aspect of Shay seeing hope in people is important, and is what will stop him from killing anyone who gets in his path like he did in this episode. An example of this would be the soldier he spares in the flash forward of episode 45. Considering Shay's senses detect everything, he likely heard what the other officers were saying, and how that specific one was clearly against what was going on. So when Shay actually confronts them, he kills them all and only spares the one who showed any form of concern in regards to what was going to occur. And this is likely why Shay can't be with the Cubs, as someone like Tevin likely wouldn't outright kill people using Shay's mentality. So for example, if Ilios asked Tevin to spare Leif, he likely would have, as he was already beaten. But as we know, Shay didn't, and that is because in Shay's eyes he was irredeemable. To end things off, I want to say this will likely be one of my favorite episodes this season, and this may have been one of my favorite videos to script. The direct use of God as well as the lessons he imbues were truly amazing to read through and understand. Being able to piece together the potential inspiration for Alice's talent, as well as take a deeper look into Thanatos' mentality, a character we truly didn't have much knowledge about outside of his strength. Seeing Shay at his breaking point and willing to sacrifice everyone to stop the inevitability that is Thanatos. I feel like there isn't a lot of bad that can be said about this episode, as it accomplishes exactly what it's meant to, which is to help Shay believe in his own existence and purpose, as remember in episode 117, his faith was starting to wane, and it also helps foreshadow the path Shay will take to dealing with the forces of evil. And lastly, for the comment of the week, I would like to put a spotlight on Glorious 007. Now I completely agree with this comment in its entirety, and as a believer, God being written into the story, this episode was the grand highlight of it. It's also amazing to see how Brent is able to weave Christianity into the story in such a natural and smooth way. But anyway, that's the video guys. Let me know your favorite part of the chapter was in the comments below, as well as how you feel about the things I mentioned in the highlight section. Don't forget to read the actual episode for yourself, and be sure to like it as well. And I will see y'all in the next one.